we have in California, Raul, pronouns are he, him, believes that people who express bigoted views shouldn't be allowed in politics, even if those views are religious. So you're saying you're opposed to free speech, Raul?
To a degree. So let me explain. So
Sure.
sorry if I sound a little bit nervous. I love your show.
Okay.
I just want to preface
You'll
that.
get over it. Shannon doesn't bite.
Unless I'm asked to, and I consent.
Well, okay, so you know how like in a movie theater you're not allowed to yell fire?
Actually, you are.
I thought you weren't, because that endangers people's safety. You know what I mean? People could.
So that is an incredible example that the Supreme Court used when talking about free speech, but it doesn't mean that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. As a matter of fact, Arden and I just saw Penn and Teller here in Austin at the theater, and Penn yelled fire in a crowded theater specifically to make that point. It's not just about the speech, but in any case, continue.
Okay, so based off of that, sorry if I'm not just, I'm like new to this whole thing. So could you be penalized in some form legally for yelling fire in a crowded movie theater, and did that cause some sort of damage to somebody?
Yeah, it is possible that if by utterance of words and taking action, you basically like inciting a riot or putting people at risk, there may in fact be legal consequences. I'm not a lawyer. It would be better if we had Johnny on here, but yes, there are potential consequences from it. But
okay,
as an issue of free speech, expressing a bigoted view is not remotely comparable to directly putting people's lives at risk. Like saying run for the exits right now because there's someone in here with a gun would put people's lives at risk. But standing up and saying, I don't like white people, I don't like black people, I don't like brown people, I don't like whatever, that doesn't, there's no immediate threat there. And it is in fact protected speech to be able to express that. The KKK has every right to have their opinions and express their opinions, no matter how awful they are.
I agree with you on that, but that's not what I'm saying. You should be able to allowed to say anything you want as long as you're not, putting people directly in harm as a result of it.
Okay.
But I draw a distinction between just saying something, like saying I hate white people or something like that, and going out and creating laws that persecute people for being white. Those are two different things.
Okay, so we need to pause. We need to pause, Raul, because what you said is that what the call screener thing says is that you believe that people who express bigoted views shouldn't be allowed in politics, even if those views are religious. And now it seems what you're complaining about is whether or not those bigoted views can become laws. And that's two very, very, very different things.
Yes, and although I do believe that this next argument I'm going to make is both reasonable, but can also be kind of flimsy. I'll advance. So I was watching your this is kind of what like inspired this thought that I had. And you were talking about how it was one of your shows you did like a year or two ago, and you were saying that people have the right to want to rob a bank. You know what I mean? Like it's not like a thought crime, but robbing the bank and acting on it is the problem. Yes. Right? But we should, like people are allowed to want to rob banks. And while I agree that people shouldn't necessarily be punished for wanting to rob a bank, just the simple act of wanting it, I do believe we should be doing something about people who have these sorts of thoughts, because who's more likely to rob a bank? Someone who doesn't want to rob a bank, or someone who does?
I'm sorry, but there's an incredibly flawed bit of reasoning here. Who's better to figure out how to prevent bank robberies? Someone who sits around and thinks about all the different ways to rob a bank, or somebody who's never thought about it?
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
Who's more likely to find ways to prevent bank robberies? Someone who doesn't want to rob a bank, or somebody who does? I
guess somebody who does, because they think about it more.
Exactly. this is, you cannot say, here's a thought, and because of that, the thought itself is so dangerous that we should discourage it. That is absolute bullshit. I mean, that is the peak of bullshit. There is no thought that in and of itself is so dangerous we should go and try to scrub it from people's heads, because every single thought that you have that can lead to a negative can also potentially lead to a way to counter that negative or to stop that.
Yes.
If somebody who hates cancer is more likely to find to work on a solution to it. But what, by the way, this is already pretty much handled in the law. We have pretty good grounds on free speech. We have pretty good grounds on how we go about figuring out what laws should and should exist and all of this. What the fuck is your point? How on earth are you going to get into someone's head and know what they're thinking and how dangerous it is? And then what are you going to do about it?
No. Okay. So I don't have it all figured out. I'm going to say that this is just like a thought. And I was going to say this and I forgot to say this at the beginning. I mainly came on here to get your views, see where they were, and I am 100% completely open to the idea of changing them, being presented with arguments and logic and whatnot. So I'm not closed off by any means.
Okay,
so I appreciate.
Tell me where we're going, because right now, no offense to you, this feels like a monumental waste of everybody's time to be worried about, oh, there are people with bad thoughts and what should we do about them? Because bad thoughts aren't bad. The actions are bad.
Okay, so going back to what you said, who is more likely to stop bank robberies? People who want to rob banks and think about it all the time, or people who don't think about it at all? That doesn't mean that the only way we can find ways to stop bank robberies is by using people who think about this all the time and want to do it. Obviously, we can prevent these sorts of bad things from happening with people who just want to think about it, in the sense that they just don't want these things to happen, not people who have these temptations for it.
So what? That's a completely irrelevant point. You're basically saying that isn't the only way we can do it. I'm asking somebody here, like, who writes the best mystery novels? Somebody who sits around thinking about how to try to get away with the perfect crime?
I mean, yeah, but that's I would say that's different, because writing a mystery novel isn't an immoral act. So
no, you're missing the point, Raul. Here's two people, and they're both sitting around thinking about how to commit the perfect crime, and they both write a novel about committing the crime, but one of them is actually planning to commit a crime. How do you tell the difference?
Maybe you ask them. I'm not saying we need to go into people's heads or try to read their minds.
I'm done with this. I am beyond bored with this. Is beyond ridiculous. Two people wrote a book, and now you're going to go ask each of them, are you planning on committing a crime? You haven't really thought this through enough. I'm going to move on.
Okay.
But I appreciate the call.
Bye, Raul.
Some of these I just do for me, evidently. But